She had everything the camera could capture. Behind those piercing eyes lay a firestorm no director could tame. A talent so undeniable it survived decades of whispered accusations. The price of perfection carved lines into her soul long before they touched her face. Stay watching. Hollywood's most misunderstood legend finally speaks her truth. Dorothy Faye Dunaway arrived in Hollywood like a thunderbolt in 1967, transforming overnight from Broadway actress to silver screen sensation as Bonnie Parker in Bonnie and Clyde. Critics and audiences alike were mesmerized by her ferocious talent and luminous presence. With a single performance, she redefined what a leading lady could embody: danger, intelligence, vulnerability, and raw sexuality fused into something entirely new. "It put me firmly in the ranks of actresses that would do work that was art," she once reflected about this breakthrough role that earned her first Oscar nomination. What few realized was how quickly the double-edged sword of fame would cut both ways. The industry adored her fierce intelligence on screen while growing increasingly wary of it off-camera. This tension between her undeniable talent and her reputation for being difficult would define the next 5 decades of her career and ultimately become both her signature strength and her Achilles heel. The narrative of Dunaway's Charity Fritz, just a Twarschakverfeind. Life stretches far beyond her iconic performances. Born in 1941 in the small town of Bascom, Florida, to a career Army non-commissioned officer and a housewife, her childhood was marked by frequent relocations and the eventual divorce of her parents when she was 14. Every 2 years, a new school, a new beginning. "I learned early it didn't pay to hang on to relationships for very long," she later reflected. These early disruptions cultivated both resilience and a deep-seated insecurity that would later fuel her infamous perfectionism. Her father's military precision and her mother's struggle to raise children alone after the divorce imprinted on young Faye a determination that bordered on obsession. She described her father as alcoholic, a demon she would later battle herself. After graduating from Leon High School in Tallahassee, she pursued higher education at Boston University, earning her Bachelor of Fine Arts in Theatre. Despite winning a Fulbright scholarship to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London, she turned it down to join the Lincoln Center Repertory Theatre in New York, where her raw talent quickly drew attention from industry insiders. On Broadway, Dunaway caught the eye of director Elia Kazan, who would become one of her most influential mentors. He encouraged her to mine her rawest emotions in her acting, a technique that made her mesmerizing on screen but perhaps contributed to the emotional volatility that would later cause her troubles. Her work in productions like A Man for All Seasons and Hogan's Goat established her as a serious actress of uncommon intensity. When Hollywood finally called, she initially hesitated, committed to her stage career. But the camera loved her in ways even she couldn't have anticipated. After appearing in The Happening and Hurry Sundown in 1967, director Arthur Penn cast her opposite Warren Beatty in Bonnie and Clyde, a film that would not only launch her to stardom, but also help usher in a new era of American cinema. The film's mixture of violence, sexuality, and anti-establishment sentiment perfectly captured the rebellious spirit of the late 1960s. Dunaway's portrayal of Bonnie Parker, defiant, sensual, and ultimately doomed, became instantly iconic. Roger Ebert wrote at the time, "Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway, in the title roles, surpass anything they have done on the screen before, and establish themselves as major actors." Overnight, Dunaway found herself on magazine covers, her angular face and piercing gaze instantly recognizable. She was nominated for Best Actress at the Academy Awards, and though she didn't win, the film's impact secured her position as one of Hollywood's most in-demand actresses. What the public couldn't see was how unprepared she felt for the sudden onslaught of fame. The photographers lurking outside her home, the endless scrutiny of her appearance and personal life, the pressure to be both glamorous and authentic in an industry built on illusion. Her follow-up performances in The Thomas Crown Affair, 1968, opposite Steve McQueen, and The Arrangement, 1969, with Kirk Douglas, cemented her reputation as an actress who could convey complex emotional states with subtle intensity. During this time, she entered into a relationship with Italian actor Marcello Mastroianni, hoping for stability amid her whirlwind rise. But the relationship ended after 2 years when Mastroianni, still married though separated from his wife, refused to divorce. The pattern of personal disappointment alongside professional triumph was establishing itself, a theme that would recur throughout her life. By the early 1970s, Dunaway was working with legendary directors like Arthur Penn and Sidney Pollack, and commanding top billing alongside the most celebrated actors of her generation. Yet behind the successful facade, she struggled with the loneliness of fame and the beginning of what she would later recognize as mental health issues. By 1974, Dunaway had established herself as one of the most compelling actresses of her generation. When Roman Polanski cast her as the mysterious Evelyn Mulwray in Chinatown, it should have been a dream pairing of director and star. Instead, it became one of Hollywood's most notorious on-set clashes. Polanski's dictatorial directing style collided spectacularly with Dunaway's artistic integrity and her need to understand her character's psychological motivations. Roman was very much an autocrat, always forcing things, Dunaway later wrote in her autobiography. It ranged from the physical to the mental. He was very domineering and abrasive, and made it clear he wanted to manipulate the performance. That approach has never succeeded with me. Their feud escalated when Polanski reportedly plucked a stray hair from her head without permission during filming. According to Dunaway, he came up to me and said, "You have a hair out of place," and he reached up and pulled it out of my head. I couldn't believe it. No one had ever treated me like that, spoken to me so rudely, invaded my physical space. She stormed off the set, triggering a production delay that required producer Robert Evans to intervene. But the most infamous confrontation came during a scene filmed in a car. According to industry lore, tensions reached their breaking point when Dunaway, denied a bathroom break during filming, allegedly threw a cup of her own urine at the director. When asked about this incident years later by a Guardian journalist, Dunaway refused to discuss it, saying it doesn't even deserve the dignity of a response. Despite these conflicts, or perhaps channeling them into her performance, she delivered one of cinema's most nuanced portrayals as the mysterious, tragic Evelyn Mulwray, her famous "She's My Sister and My Daughter" revelation scene remains one of the most powerful moments in film history. She earned her second Oscar nomination for the role, though she lost to Ellen Burstyn for Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. Ironically, despite their battles, Dunaway later called Chinatown possibly the best film I ever made. How many knew that beneath her composed exterior raged an undiagnosed mental health condition that would only be identified decades later? In her 2024 documentary, she finally connected her on-set behaviors to her bipolar disorder, suggesting that Polanski's controlling style triggered her worst symptoms. The pinnacle of Dunaway's career arrived in 1976 with her portrayal of ruthless television executive Diana Christensen in Network, Sidney Lumet's prophetic satire of the television industry. Working with screenwriter Paddy Chayefsky's brilliant dialogue, Dunaway created a character so driven by ratings and success that she sacrifices her humanity. The role seemed to draw from the public's growing perception of Dunaway herself. Brilliant but cold, ambitious to the point of ruthlessness. Yet Dunaway found the human core beneath the caricature, making Diana simultaneously terrifying and sympathetic. "I tried to make her a three-dimensional human being," Dunaway explained. "Someone who was so driven she'd lost touch with her own feelings." On Oscar night 1977, She finally claimed her Academy Award for Best Actress, beating out fellow nominees Marie-Christine Barrault, Talia Shire, Sissy Spacek, and Liv Ullmann. Her acceptance speech was gracious but brief, thanking the film's writer, director, and her co-stars before exiting the stage. The following morning, photographer Terry O'Neill, who would later become her husband, captured the iconic image of Dunaway poolside at the Beverly Hills Hotel, Oscar trophy beside her, newspapers scattered around, her gaze distant and contemplative. The photo, titled The Morning After, became one of the most famous images in Hollywood history. It perfectly encapsulated the hollow victory of achieving the industry's highest honor while silently questioning, is this all there is? What observers couldn't see was that behind this career zenith, personal fulfillment remained elusive for the actress. The pressure to maintain her position in Hollywood, to find roles worthy of her talents, and to balance her professional ambitions with her desire for a personal life weighed heavily. Following her Oscar win, Dunaway took a break from acting, reportedly to sort out her personal life. By this time, she had married Peter Wolf, lead singer of the Jay Gales Band, in 1974, but their marriage was strained by their busy careers and frequent separations. The relationship ended in divorce in 1979. During this period, Dunaway began to explore different kinds of roles, appearing in the thriller Eyes of Laura Mars, 1978, and the sports drama The Champ, 1979. These films were commercial successes, but lacked the artistic heft of her earlier work. As the 1970s closed, critics began to question whether she could maintain the extraordinary standard she had set for herself. Had she peaked too soon? Would she find roles that could showcase her talents as she moved beyond her ingenue years? The film industry, notoriously unkind to aging actresses, seemed uncertain about how to utilize her fierce intelligence and intensity as she entered her 40s. As the 1980s dawned, Dunaway's personal life took a new direction when she began a relationship with British photographer Terry O'Neill, whom she eventually married in 1983. Together, they welcomed son Liam through adoption in 1980, though for years Dunaway maintained the fiction that she had given birth to him. She wanted to be a mother, O'Neill later explained, but there came a point when she had to face the fact that kids were not coming. This fabrication revealed her vulnerability about motherhood, a role she desperately wanted, but biology denied. It also demonstrated the immense pressure female stars felt to maintain certain appearances, even personal ones, to satisfy public expectations. The joy of motherhood coincided with what would become the most controversial role of her career. In 1981, Dunaway portrayed Hollywood legend Joan Crawford in Mommy Dearest, based on the tell-all memoir by Crawford's adopted daughter, Christina. Dunaway approached the role with her characteristic intensity, physically transforming herself to embody Crawford down to the smallest detail. My task was to portray a woman, a full woman who she was in all her facets, not just one, Dunaway explained. I tried to illuminate who this woman was, but it was more than just about being angry. It was about trying to examine and explore the forces that undermined her. But the film, directed by Frank Perry, veered into melodrama, and audiences responded not with sympathy or understanding, but with mockery. Dunaway's intense performance, particularly scenes like the infamous no-wire hangers moment, became fodder for parody. Vincent Canby of the New York Times wrote, "Mommy Dearest doesn't work very well, but the ferocious intensity of Faye Dunaway's impersonation does." Other critics were less kind, and the film became known as an unintentional camp classic, beloved by gay audiences but dismissed by serious film critics. Dunaway, who had poured herself into the role, was devastated by the reception. "I think it was a brilliant performance," she later said. "I just don't think they knew how to market the film." The cruel irony wasn't lost on industry insiders. Dunaway, in trying to portray a reportedly abusive Hollywood diva, found herself permanently typecast as one. Her career never fully recovered from this pivotal miscalculation. As John Waters later reported in his DVD commentary, Dunaway felt the film ruined her career to an extent, and she refuses to discuss the film. Indeed, for decades afterward, she would end interviews if "Mommy Dearest" was mentioned. The film marked a turning point, from being one of Hollywood's most sought-after leading ladies to struggling to find roles worthy of her talent. Her relationship with O'Neill dissolved by 1987, and though they continued co-parenting Liam, the dissolution of her second marriage added to Dunaway's growing sense of personal and professional isolation. Why did one of Hollywood's most desirable women struggle so profoundly with lasting relationships? The question haunted both her fans and Dunaway herself. Throughout the 1980s, she took on roles in films like Supergirl, 1984, that failed to showcase her talents. There were bright spots: her performance as alcoholic writer. Willow Weston in Barfly, 1987, opposite Mickey Rourke, earned critical praise, but these successes became increasingly rare as roles grew scarcer throughout the 1980s and 1990s. Dunaway's reputation for being difficult solidified. Legendary actress Bette Davis publicly called her totally impossible and very unprofessional. After their work together on the 1976 TV movie The Disappearance of Amy Jack, Nicholson reportedly nicknamed her the dreaded Dunaway. On the set of Mommy Dearest, co-star Rutanya Alda claimed Dunaway slapped her. Stories circulated of her demanding behavior, perfectionism, and conflicts with directors and co-stars. Yet, those who worked closely with Dunaway often described a different person: intensely committed, certainly, but also insecure and vulnerable beneath her formidable exterior. Her seemingly erratic behavior, mood swings, and perfectionism had a hidden cause that would only be revealed decades later. In the 2024 HBO documentary Faye, Dunaway finally disclosed her diagnosis with bipolar disorder, which explained much of her behavior that had been dismissed simply as difficult. "The mania we tap into, and the sadness, of course," she explained in the documentary. "I don't know how all that works exactly, but I understand that I need all of that to use in my craft. It has been a difficulty, of course, as a person sometimes. It's something I've had to deal with and overcome and understand." Throughout the 1990s, Dunaway worked primarily in independent films and television. Her performance in the TV movie Gia, 1998, in which she played the agent of model Gia Karangi, portrayed by Angelina Jolie, reminded audiences of her formidable talent. She returned to the stage in 1996 to portray opera diva Maria Callas in the one-woman show Master Class, winning the Sarah Siddons Award for her performance. This success led Dunaway to purchase the rights to the play, with plans to direct and star in a film adaptation. The project became something of an obsession for her, but despite years of effort and investment of her own money, financing fell through, and the film was never completed. The failure of this passion project was a bitter disappointment that mirrored her struggles in Hollywood, brilliant concepts that somehow never reached their full potential. Untold, New Millennium saw Dunaway take on smaller roles in films like The Rules of Attraction, 2002, and make guest appearances on television, shows including CSI and Grey's Anatomy. Though no longer the box office draw she once was, she maintained her striking presence and commitment to her craft. Behind the scenes, she continued to struggle with her undiagnosed mental health issues while raising her son as a single mother. Liam Dunaway O'Neill would later reveal in the Faye documentary that his mother would keep her emotions inside and then let it out, suggesting that the composed public persona Dunaway maintained often masked private turmoil. The final act of Dunaway's public career included both humiliation and redemption. In 2017, she found herself at the center of the biggest blunder in Academy Awards history when she and Warren Beatty erroneously announced La La Land as Best Picture instead of the actual winner. Moonlight, due to an envelope mix-up. The moment was painfully symbolic. The actress, who had once ruled Hollywood, was now associated with its most embarrassing gaffe. Later explaining the incident on NBC News, Dunaway admitted feeling very guilty about the mistake, though it was clearly not her fault, but rather a problem with the organization of the envelopes backstage. 2 years later, in 2019, Dunaway was fired from the Broadway-bound play Tea at 5, in which she was to portray Katharine Hepburn, following reports of backstage conflicts. According to various reports, she had allegedly created a hostile and dangerous environment backstage, reportedly throwing things at crew members and forgetting her lines. Her former assistant sued her for verbal harassment and discrimination, further tarnishing her reputation. The press declared the then 78-year-old screen legend cancelled, and many assumed her career was definitively over. Why did the industry that once celebrated her seem so eager to write her final chapter? Yet Faye Dunaway's story wasn't finished. In 2024, she re-emerged at the Cannes Film Festival alongside her son Liam and his partner Mackenzie Roth for the premiere of Faye, the documentary directed by Laurent Bouzereau that finally allowed her to tell her own story. In it, she revealed her struggles with bipolar disorder and alcoholism, which she inherited from her father, and how these conditions had affected both her career and personal life. The film featured interviews with collaborators including Sharon Stone and Mickey Rourke, who offered nuanced perspectives on working with the legendary actress. Dunaway's willingness to be vulnerable on camera offered a new lens through which to view her legendary career, not as the tale of a difficult diva, but as that of a brilliant artist battling internal demons while creating some of cinema's most unforgettable performances. Film scholar J.E. Smith suggested in an interview that Dunaway's reputation stemmed not just from her behavior, but from gender bias. She was fierce, she was independent, she was intelligent, and loved looking great for herself, not for men. Perhaps because of this, even more than her mental health struggles, she was doomed to fail in late 20th century Hollywood. The documentary revealed a woman who, despite her struggles, had found peace in her relationship with her son and her young grandson, Oliver, born in 2022. At 83, Dunaway had found a measure of peace and understanding that had eluded her during her tumultuous prime. Though her career had not followed the trajectory many predicted after her meteoric rise in the late 1960s and 70s, her legacy as one of cinema's most compelling performers remained secure. Films like Bonnie and Clyde, Chinatown, and Network continue to be studied and celebrated by new generations of filmmakers and film lovers. Her journey reminds us that behind the glamour of stardom often lies a much more complex and human story of struggle, resilience, and ultimately, self-acceptance. Dunaway's career spans from the twilight of the old Hollywood studio system through the revolutionary new Hollywood of the 1970s and into the modern era. Through it all, she remained fiercely committed to her art, even when the industry and her own demons worked against her. As Cannes Film Festival artistic director Thierry Frémaux said, "She has one of the most wonderful filmographies of any actress. Look at her movies from the 70s, for example. She only made good choices. She's had an incredible career." In a Hollywood that often treats its aging female stars with indifference or cruelty, Dunaway refused to fade away quietly. Her story is a testament to the psychological cost of fame, the double standards applied to women in the entertainment industry, and the personal toll of creating art while battling mental illness. It is also a reminder of the extraordinary power of reinvention. How even at the end of a long and complicated career, new understanding can reshape our narrative and offer redemption. If stories of Hollywood's golden age captivate you, the real stories behind the glamour. Remember that legends like Dunaway remind us of the human cost behind every iconic performance. The tears were never glycerin. The pain never merely acted. Their sacrifices allowed us to experience art that endures long after the Klieg lights dimmed. Performances that continue to move us decades after they were captured on film. In Dunaway's piercing gaze, we glimpse not just the character, but the woman behind it, complex, flawed, brilliant, and ultimately indomitable.